Didn't that game just perfectly encapsulate Aston Villa Football Club in calendar year 2024? Like a roller coaster. Exhilaration and joy, anguish and frustration. And as part of this show, I should probably also recap my highs and lows of this past year. Presented by 24/7 Services, let's review Aston Villa 2, Brighton and Hove Albion 2. Welcome inside the parlor, Holy Trinity Show headquarters here in British Columbia, Canada. My cat snuck in here and decided they were going to start taking down the parlor Christmas tree, smashing a couple of the very hard to find round badge baubles. Maybe it's a sign that the tree needs to come down. This will be the last show with the Christmas tree in it, and I find this a very melancholy time of year with such heightened expectation and build up towards Christmas. I do find this time of year a little bit of a letdown, kind of like the game on Monday. And we attack the new year with equal parts optimism and trepidation, both in life and with our football club. On Sunday, I had a wonderful dinner with one of the first real dedicated viewers of this show, Richard Davies from Midland Honda in Ontario, who sponsored my transformative first trip over to England in 2023. And Richard was out here with his wife Carmen to procure a beautiful 7-month-old show boxer named Maestro, who is the son of a Westminster Best in Show winner, Doc, another Canadian dog. It's an incredible world, this high-end dog breeding business. So we had a great dinner, talked all things Villa, and now Richard and his wife Carmen and Maestro are going to drive 5 days across Canada because this particular breed can't be shoved in the cargo hold of an airplane. And one of the things I vow to do in 2025 is have more meetups with some of my fellow Canadian Villa fans.
So good evening and welcome to Villa Park for today's game in the Premier League. Aston Villa versus Brighton and Hove Albion.
If you're new to the show, maybe a Newcastle or a Brighton and Hove Albion fan, the Holy Trinity Show endeavors to identify and scrutinize the 3 key issues or moments that define Villa 2, Brighton 2. With Alex Dutton amongst the hopeful faithful, taking it all in for the final time in 2024, expect new material from Alex's band Atarka in the coming months. You're probably tired of hearing me bang on about this, but the ratio between shot attempts and shots hitting the target and testing the goalkeeper were once again very wide for Villa. And we saw quite a few examples of stray efforts flying over, including the very final action of the game, which could have earned Villa a winner had it been on target. Duels won were my extra stat, and in that department, Villa were decent in a game that oftentimes saw many quick possession changes, then it got stretched, and then it became even helter-skelter at times. We're officially now halfway through the season, and Unai Emery admitted on Monday that we are probably below the expected and anticipated points needed to qualify for Europe again next season. And when you think about the points that we've chucked away late, thinking back to Bournemouth, the game on Monday, and we could even throw Nottingham Forest in there. Imagine we got a point or even 3 in that game. Well, add those up. That's 7 points. Where would those 7 points put us now? Are we going to see an uptick in form in 2025, or is it going to be more of the same? One thing's for sure, January is going to be a hugely demanding month with 7 games, including our final 2 Champions League encounters and the FA Cup tie with West Ham. Right, let's cut to the chase. As I said off the top, this game on Monday was a microcosm of Aston Villa's campaign thus far, and I am positive that the footballing hierarchy is aware of all the same issues that we as fans see. The real question, however, is can they address those issues this season without making changes to the squad? And we know the winter window is notoriously difficult for doing business, Morgan Rogers notwithstanding from last year. And would Villa actually have to move some players out if they do, in fact, identify somebody who is able to come in? My gut tells me minor repairs, not major renovations. How's that for a 24/7 services segue? I'm going to challenge you to resolve in 2025 to finally get to that project that you've been putting off all this time. Rejuvenate a space in your home or your place of business, and the 24/7 Services decorating team can help you from start to finish. And one of the easiest ways is with simple paint and paper, as we dip into the archives to show you some examples of how dramatically you can rejuvenate any space in your home. You don't have to strip a room down to the studs. But if you do want to rip it right down to the studs and start over with a new layout, new fixtures, tiles, bathroom, kitchen, whatever it may be, 24/7 Services can help you with that as well. And you might get to meet Villa Mad twins, Owen and Mitchell Handsaker, your bathroom, kitchen, plumbing, gas fitting, and much more experts. Chris here did exactly that. Now he's thrilled with how his daily bathroom experience has completely changed. 2025 is your year, my friend. This is the year you're going to go do it. 24/7 Services is there to help you, and they would like to wish you and all Villa fans a very hammery new year. Big issue, the in-game management. This match had ebbs and flows to it. It became quite open at times, but I don't think there's any debate. From minute number 30 to about minute number 60, with all that added time at the end of the first half, and then the great start to the second with the goal, Aston Villa were dominant, and it looked like the third goal was inevitable. And then young Fabian Hürzeler made a triple change in and around minute number 58 that not only halted Villa's momentum, but actually wrestled it back to the visitors. As much as I'm not worthy of criticizing Unai Emery, it did seem like our response to those three substitutions came a little bit too late, because both Boubacar Kamara and Yuri Tielemans, to me anyway, looked like they were tiring by virtue of how open that game suddenly became. And before you know it, Tariq Lamptey had equalized, and then we make the substitutions. Again, I'm not going to criticize. I may critique or make the observation that Unai Emery does tend to err on the side of consistency, bordering on stubbornness at times. The Lamptey goal, by the way, started as it so often does, with an avoidable change of possession. John McGinn looked like he had everything well in hand at this stage. Maybe he even thought he was being fouled, but then he tries a very low percentage ball to Morgan Rogers, which didn't connect. And from there, we actually saw examples of how similar our two teams are as we try to play out of the back and play around or through the press, because it went around the press, then accelerated through midfield, and then led to ultimately the important overload, this time at the edge of the Villa box, in which Joao Pedro laid it off for Tariq Lamptey. Slightly ironic that Pedro played in this game and then had a major hand in the game-tying goal when he probably could have been sent off against Brentford in the game previous. Now, I was always under the impression in the laws of the game that even attempting to strike an opponent was considered the same thing as actually striking opponent, like when you swing your elbow in the direction of an opponent. But that, not a red card, a boot graze on somebody's back, 3-game suspension. My apologies to the dead horse that I continue to flog. Key issue number 3, Pau problems. Now, I never actually saw a replay of why Pau Torres was hobbled and on the sideline holding his foot before actually being helped off the park, not putting any weight on the foot. But you don't need to know sign language to understand the international gesture from athletic therapists to managers that this looks not very good. And as we learned from Jacob Ramsey's metatarsal fracture, that is a very problematic and long-term injury. Having Tyrone Mings as insurance and a replacement player at this stage is certainly not the worst thing. Very different player, obviously, than Pau Torres, but one who I believe puts priorities on the defensive actions first. And when he came on, he actually completed 3 accurate long balls in a row, ended up going 50% on the day. But he also went down a couple of times, and as the game wore on, he looked less and less comfortable, which is a bit of a concern. And we certainly do not need a when it rains, it pours injury situation right now. Key issue number 2, defensive dereliction. More examples of back-end frailty in this game, which is really just an extension of a theme that has been omnipresent all season long. I mean, 2 clean sheets from 19 Premier League games is very un-Unai Emery-like, especially when he first arrived and that spring run-in in 2023. And there are many ways to look at defending. You could talk about it from an overall team standpoint. You could narrow it down to a unit of 4, the back 4, or you could talk about individual one-on-one defending. Now, I've spoken numerous times about how it's not always just the defenders who are the cause of goals allowed, and that many times this season, including recently, we've been either imbalanced or somehow sloppy in the middle of the park or even farther forward that leads then to problems at the back. Can our back 4, though, be better collectively and individually? Absolutely. And the first goal is a testament to that. I mean, it's another long ball that causes all sorts of problems, and it's not so bad that you could put Benny Hill music behind it, but it's not great either. To suggest that we're somehow more vulnerable because Ezri Konsa is playing out of position at right back doesn't fly with me, because in this instance, he's in the exact position he would probably be in if he was playing as a right center back. The problem is, he's so passive here, and Konsa is a quick player, and yet he doesn't really react. It's as if he's afraid of giving away a penalty. And then Diego Carlos and Pau Torres offer no support or solidity behind him. In fact, Torres bites so hard, it's almost a little bit embarrassing. And if you're the opposing manager now, because this has become a thing, conceding early for Aston Villa, you're telling your team, get after them right out of the gates. They're fragile. During our fantastic run-in of the spring of 2023, our center back pairing was almost exclusively Ezri Konsa and Tyrone Mings, which was great. Continuity, familiarity, there was a nice balance between the two of them, and they both kind of have competitiveness and edge, which is something that I worry Diego Carlos and Pau Torres are lacking slightly. There's a languidness to their elegance, and neither of them are prolific aerial duelists either when it comes to the long ball. I understand the idea of having footballing center backs, because if they can break the lines of confrontation, that means that you have an overload in midfield, which is part of Emery's system. But call me a traditionalist. I think the first attribute of a defender should be getting goal side and being difficult to get around. Even before Pau Torres' injury, I'd be shocked if the club wasn't prioritizing another center back either in this window or beyond. And we can imagine the attributes, the same as what everybody wants. 6'4", lightning quick, great in the air, perfect feet, highly intelligent, bit of a bite. Basically, we want the next Saliba or Gabriel while they're young and cheap and ready to make the next step. And I wonder if Monchi and his scouting network have anything close to those kinds of attributes. Perhaps we're looking for a loanee just to get us through to the end of the season, or maybe an upgrade to Matt Cash so that Ezri Konsa can play as the natural right-footed center back. What we do know is that only 6 teams in the Premier League have conceded more goals than us to this point in the season, and if we really want to climb back up the table, that has to be addressed. And the number 1 big issue that defined Villa 2, Brighton 2, and has been a recurring theme this season, ruthlessness reduction. Do you know there's an easy way to compensate for a lack of clean sheets or, say, defensive frailty, and that's score more goals. And at 2-1, I wrote in my notes, as Villa were counterattacking time and time again, we better get the next one because that would probably seal it. And for the umpteenth time this season, we failed to build on a 1-goal lead. In fact, we've only managed it 3 times this season, at home to Wolves, at Fulham, and at home to Brentford. We've actually come from behind to earn points more than building on leads. 6 times this year we've conceded first or have come from behind to earn at least a point. When you consider that only Liverpool and Chelsea have more missed big chances than Aston Villa, well, first of all, that tells you we're creating big chances, which is a good sign, but it also confirms that we have a conversion problem. And I know Ollie Watkins has missed a lot of big chances, but he also has 8 goals. That means he's on pace for 16. Duran has 7 goals, on pace for 14, so 30 between the two of them. That's pretty good. And Morgan Rogers has already scored 6 goals so far in this campaign. That's as many as Moussa Diaby scored in his entire Premier League season last year. But after Watkins, Duran, and Rogers, there is a big drop-off in goal-scoring contributions. John McGinn, 0 Premier League goals, same as Leon Bailey, Yuri Tielemans, and Jacob Ramsey, and I realize that injuries have, of course, played a factor in some of those players not being able to contribute. Onana and Barkley, 2 goals each, but we need more. And I would suggest that if Ramsey and Bailey could combine for even 6 goals at the start of 2025, that could be a significant contribution. We also could do with more goals from our fullbacks and central defenders, and you'd think those may come in the form of set-piece goals, specifically corners, because only Manchester City and Tottenham have earned more corners than Aston Villa this season. And that tells us that we are getting forward. We are forcing saves, blocks, clearances, and chaos. Just off the top of my head, I remember 4 goals straight from corners. First goal of the season at West Ham, at Fulham, at Tottenham, and then Ross Barkley at home to Palace. Torres came within millimeters against City, and Rogers' goal Monday was from a second phase, and I think we've had a few of those, and those count. But lately, it seems like we've tried the Arsenal approach of blocking out the goalkeeper and playing it right under the crossbar. But Arsenal is way ahead of everybody else in scoring from corners. 16 last year. We're on pace now for around 8 this year. And given that we earn so many, should we be expecting more, or at least more shots on target following corner kicks? The Sill Hill Brewery star performer is Ollie Watkins. Our Ollie just loves playing Brighton and Hove Albion, and he took the responsibility and a fantastic penalty. I mean, when the ball hits side netting first, you know it's a good spot shot. But then he sets up the 2-1 goal with a very instinctive and quickly timed ball to Morgan Rogers. And what a shame that he just couldn't get over the one that was bobbling around in the box on that final corner of the game, because that would have sent everybody home very happy. I'd like to toast Ollie Watkins with a North Star hopped porter, which is a great alternative during this Guinness shortage happening right now. 4.5%, creamy, sweet, and surprisingly Moorish. And you know Sill Hill has kegs of it if you're struggling for a beer like this. And from the entire Sill Hill crew, see you Saturday prior to the Leicester game, and of course, have a hoppy new year. Unfortunately, 2 more points dropped at home, but another goal for Ollie Watkins, which also came from the penalty spot, which counts as a set-piece goal, coming from a successful VAR review, making up for the one not given to Morgan Rogers, the Van Hecke one, which I actually thought was more of a penalty. But yet another goal conceded in the final 15 minutes of the game. Early and late goals conceded, an Achilles heel for us right now. So now we have to prepare for the arrival of Leicester on Saturday, and this game does make me a little bit uneasy because we'll be without Pau Torres, John Duran, and Morgan Rogers, who picked up a 5th yellow card on Monday. And it does make me a little bit uneasy, these types of games, because they're a wounded animal, second from bottom in the league, 4 straight losses comfortably, by the way, 5 winless. Ruud van Nistelrooy as a player destroyed us with Manchester United. Let's hope that doesn't carry over into management. And of course, you always worry a little bit about old man Vardy or Jordan Ayew or somebody like that coming back and haunting us. But we did beat them earlier this season at their home. If we could figure out how to replace Rogers, who's big for us, maybe with Jacob Ramsey, starting from the beginning on the left-hand side with McGinn or Tielemans playing in behind Ollie Watkins, I'm sure we'll figure something out. But still, it is a derby. Anything can happen. And as you know, It's not been easy for us this season. I'm going to wrap up the program with the best and worst moments of calendar year 2024, starting with the worst moment, which in my opinion was losing the first leg of the Conference League quarterfinal against Olympiacos at Villa Park. I mean, we dropped a stinker despite the fact that we were running on fumes already at that point in the season while still trying to chase the Champions League places. But oh man, poor Douglas Luiz, it was as if he knew he was on his way out the door, first giving away a bad penalty and then missing a penalty of his own. It felt at the time like we had lost the entire tie in that first leg. As for the best moments of 2024, well, an honorable mention was the 2-0 win over Wolves in April, because I got to see it live and in person with two dear old friends, Dale and Allison, who had never been to Villa Park, and that just kickstarted another fantastic visit to Birmingham. Top 2024 moment number 3 had to be the penalty shootout win over Lille that took us to the quarterfinals of the Conference League. I mean, Emi Martinez heroics, ice-cold penalties, and a night that the traveling support, or anybody else for that matter, will not forget for a long time. The 2024 number 2 moment? John Duran single-handedly earning us a massive point, which ultimately helped us qualify for Champions League. Yes, we got some help from Manchester City a couple of days later, but still, coming from 2 goals down late to tie Liverpool, earn a point, and get us a little closer to Champions League was certainly a morale booster, and that point ultimately did help us achieve the number 1 moment of 2024, which had to be the 1-0 win over Bayern Munich in Champions League. I mean, I was levitating after that game, and so many people I spoke with who were there said they'll never forget that night at Villa Park. And in the wake of losing Gary Shaw so soon before that game, it somehow felt serendipitous. And this was one of those rare times where the hype and the build-up were actually exceeded by the occasion, the performance, and the result. That was the night we all got a glimpse, a little taste of what Aston Villa aspires to be all the time: world class. It's 2025. That means we're 1 year away now from a World Cup, which will be hosted partially on Canadian soil, including games right in my own city, which is kind of exciting. I'd like to once again thank you for your continued support, your eyeballs and your ear holes, and I'd also like to wish you and yours the Holy Trinity, that's the 3, 2025 H's: health, happiness, and hope. If you have those 3 things, you don't need much else. Until Leicester, be well, and as always, up the mighty Villa.